Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in internet shitlords. And today I'm doing a surprise video because yesterday I did a video. I did a review of Wretched New Flesh by the Red Room, the second edition. And you should totally go see that. It hasn't gotten as many views as usual. Typically reviews don't get as many views as the usual videos, but it's always worth seeing. If nothing else, to find out about the one game that the Red Room have now admitted to me on Twitter is their favorite. It's their baby, right? And sometimes that can be good, sometimes that can be bad. You can take a look at the video and draw your own conclusions. But the point is, I had just finished making this video, posting it, right? And then literally 20 minutes later, the news comes off the wire that Cynthia Williams has resigned as CEO of Wizards of the Coast. Can you believe it? That's just typical, isn't it? You know, because I could have put off, it's a review, right? I could have put off that review to any time, right? So if they had given the announcement half an hour earlier, I would have said, I would have filmed the review, I would have filmed a video about Cynthia Williams resigning, and the review would have happened later. But instead, the review happened, so I decided to wait until the next day to do my video on Cynthia Williams. And I'm kind of glad I did. Because as it happens, right now, Bill the Elf is off he's vacationing in Hobbitland. And as such, I was finally able to catch an episode of Diversity and Dragons, because they do it on the same day that me and Bill the Elf always get together for him to cook a Michelin star meal for me. And well, as it turns out, of course, they were going to, Double D and his co-host were going to talk about Cynthia Williams. And this is my video to say that I think Double D's analysis was a bit wrong about Cynthia Williams. So what he said on his live stream was basically that Cynthia Williams was resigning, but she was obviously it must be an amicable resignation. She's probably going to go work somewhere else as CEO. That part, probably right. The CEO part. The rest of it is kind of not quite as right. And finally, Double D, his kind of conclusion in that segment was to say Cynthia Williams did good stuff for Wizards. It's just not stuff that you guys like, right? That it's not, because it's not the things we want from D&D. But that is completely wrong, okay? Based on, A, what Cynthia Williams said she was going to do for Wizards, what she told the board of Wizards, the board of Hasbro that she was going to do for Wizards, and B, the actual things that we know are the goals of Chris Cox's Hasbro version of Wizards. She's been a complete failure. There's nothing she's contributed. And the problem is this is something that happens very often in high levels of the corporate sphere, right? They're not going to when she gets fired, she's not going to have them they're not going to, unless there was some hostile reason for her getting fired beyond incompetence, they're not going to get her a cardboard box, tell her to put her fern there, and then kick her out and make sure that they take her keys, right? Or something like that, it doesn't happen that way. That happens for the poors, right? But it doesn't happen, and by the poors I mean mid-level employees that make $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 a year, right? But CEOs, that they resign, and then when they resign, they give enough time for a replacement to be recruited, or for at least an interim to be trained, and all of that sort of thing. So this is a resignation. I kind of debated him. I was on the chat and I was debating Double D about this, and he said, "Well, but do you think that that she was fired?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think she was fired exactly. I think this is what happens. A day before." I think it was a day. It might have been 2 days. I'm not sure. But somewhere 24 to 48 hours before the announcement comes out that Cynthia Williams is resigning as CEO of Wizards, a day or 2 days before, it gets leaked, or it's publicized anyways, that Wizards of the Coast has, over the last couple of years, lost 30% of its sales. Okay, it's had a 30% drop. That is huge, right? That's an enormous amount of money for them to be losing. Now, Cynthia Williams has been there for 2 years, right? So this is the message saying, it's time for you to go, Cynthia, right? You fucked up badly, right? She came in, remember, this is, and again, this is how we judge whether she's successful or not, based on what she promised she would do, okay? And Cynthia Williams promised a couple of things. First, she promised that within a few years, her Dungeons and Dragons would be a $1 billion product. Okay, it is nowhere near to $1 billion. In fact, it is further away from $1 billion now than it was 2 years ago. It's actually gone in the opposite direction from being a $1 billion product. That by itself is it. That's enough to make it clear that whatever else she's up to, it's a failure, right? Second, apart from the declining sales, she had promised that she was going to put in 4 different areas of focus. The first was, I believe, films, which the D&D movie came out, didn't do very well. Doesn't look like there's going to be much more going on there, right? It was not the runaway success she needed it to be, okay? And of course, it never was going to be. Second, the virtual tabletop. I'll get to that one in a moment, right? Third, video games. Okay, so Larian, Baldur's Gate 3, amazingly successful, wildly successful. In fact, the only thing that has basically covered for the loss of money that D&D is otherwise experiencing now. You know, it turns out D&D is hemorrhaging money. I think 30%, if you're losing 30% of your blood, you're hemorrhaging, right? That's what that sounds like, right? So D&D is hemorrhaging money, and Baldur's Gate is there like an infusion. It's this big bag of plasma. That's the only thing keeping you alive at this point, right? However, Baldur's Gate 3 isn't something she can take credit for, because it was in production like up to like 5 years before she even showed up. And the person that was in charge of that actually at the end, the one that actually delivered Baldur's Gate 3 on the Wizards end, of course, I'm not talking about the Larian people, who all must have done a really wonderful job, right? But on the Wizards end of things, it was Mike Mearls. Mike Mearls is the one that made sure to hit the landing just right, you know? And then after that, thanks to Cynthia Williams, perhaps, and I don't know if she's entirely to blame, Larian said, you know what, we're not doing any more Baldur's Gate with you people. Sorry, bye, right? Which is a huge F off, right? For Cynthia Williams. And then merchandising. Okay, so merchandising, we know there's a lot of merchandising going on. I saw the other day, I think it was on Clownfish. I wear black Converse shoes, right? I'm an old punk. I like wearing black Converse everywhere I go, pretty much, unless I really have to dress up if I'm at some high-end Illuminati event or something like that, then I might have to. But otherwise, black Converse, right? And I saw in Clownfish that now they've made a D&D Converse shoe, and it looks like the most horrific thing you could ever imagine, right? There's only one correct color pattern for Converse. It's black Converse, the standard Converse, nothing weird, white laces. That's it, okay? But, the D&D Converse shoes, and there's like D&D backpacks and D&D t-shirts and D&D onesies and whatever else, right? Like, there's all kinds of stuff of merchandising to make it a lifestyle brand. But we have no idea how well or badly it's selling. And the fact that the sales are down 30% will probably suggest that the merchandising will be taking a hit as well. Because the problem with trying to make it a product that's all about merchandising is that the thing that makes the merchandising appealing is the core concept. If the core concept stops being cool, then it's not going to sell. So chances are a lot of that D&D stuff, the D&D body pillow, I don't know, the Beholder plushies and all of that are going to do more poorly the worse D&D gets. And then finally, the virtual tabletop, right? That's the thing that maybe could have saved everything. The original plan, I'm going to make this really clear now, using all of my inside knowledge plus analytic talent as a historian. The original plan was going to be They're going to make an in-house virtual tabletop. They're going to make a new edition of D&D. That new edition will also involve changing the OGL so that they get control over the product that people make for that edition of D&D. And they can charge royalties for it. They can also distribute the content. So the content will be will be making itself on the VTT. You won't need to hire Mackenzie DeArmas anymore, right? Or any of those other losers, right? So this is also their way to get out of DEI, because I think by now almost everybody at the higher ends of the corporate world have realized that DEI is just an endless money pit of revolutionary bullcrap, and they need to get rid of it. And so, but you have to do it the safe way, because right now, if you just say we're kicking out all the diversity reasons, then that's like an invitation for open war against you from the left. But if you say, well, you know, we've reoriented ourselves, we're getting rid of the publishing arm, and that's what they were doing. They got rid of the publishing arm of D&D, and therefore with it all of the woke writers. And the original plan was that you were going to have a VTT that the content was controlled by them with the OGL 1.1, that they would be able to promote the talented people making stuff in the VTT, while also making money off of those people, and that everybody was basically going to move away from the pen and paper tabletop to the VTT, which would be a subscription model with microtransactions. That was the goal. And so then that was the reason she could say that she was intending for D&D to become a $1 billion product. If all of that happened, and all of that happened on time, then it could have been a $1 billion product. Maybe. Sort of. Perhaps. I don't know. With the merchandising, perhaps. And if the movie did really well. But the problem was all of that fell completely to pieces almost right from the beginning. Right? The VTT was behind. And I don't mean like now it's really behind. Right? Like now we're looking at like 2025 for the VTT. And the problem is they don't want to put out the main books before they put out the VTT. And they're probably going to have to now, and that ruins a lot of the, like, even more stuff for them. It's all a cascade of errors, right? But like the VTT was already way behind schedule in like mid-2023, right? Like this is not a new thing. It's been a disaster going all along. And probably because doing it in-house is stupid, right? They don't have the people with the right kind of talents. They've never been able, they've tried 2 other times before, they've never succeeded at making a proper VTT for themselves. But that was error 1. Error 2, the OGL 1.1. Who would have thunk, you know, like, I don't know who the genius was that thought he was going to be able to defy the OGL, right? That was something that, you know, and of course, it's very simple. Like, the guy could have been a genius, but not genius enough to pay attention to what's actually going on inside the hobby. Because outside the hobby, you'd look at this and go, well, yeah, but who even uses this? Nobody cares about this. But inside the hobby, you know that all third-party product, which is very valued in the tabletop hobby, and it's become even more valued in these last 10 years, right? This isn't like, you know, Marvel Comics or something like that, right? Where you can have third-party comic book creators, but nobody's going to care about their stuff as much as they care about Marvel, right? No, it doesn't work that way. Here, this is like as if Marvel had at some point given permission for other writers to use the Marvel characters and make stories in the Marvel universe. And they could do that freely and could even make money off of doing it, like they could do it commercially, right? And then for like that, and that went on for 20 years. And several people made their entire careers, and several games became beloved and extremely well known, and often more popular than the main product itself. So like if somebody had taken on, you know, I don't know, the Avengers or the Defenders or the X-Men or whatever, and ended up doing stuff with them that was like that Marvel would never do, and that did it better, and you know, and the entire movements have started on it. The OSR is a movement that started on that, you know, and it's all derived from D&D, but stuff that is like highly creative. They wouldn't have had even Arrows of Indra, never mind like Sword and Caravan. That the sort of stuff that we create is vastly more cutting edge, right? And so it's been, and it's always been really popular. And the people that are the most powerful in social media in the RPG hobby, for now at least still, are not the influencers, not the D&D influencers on YouTube that they've basically invented, that WotC has basically invented by giving them swag and trying to promote them. It's still the game designers. The designers, Margaret Weiss, in one tweet, can destroy a year's worth of effort by Ginny D. Okay, sorry, but that's how it goes, right? So they underestimated that, and as soon as there was open revolt, that was really the hallmark moment, right? That after that point, Wizards, there was no coming back from it, right? If Wizards had turned the ship around immediately when they saw, oh damn, we're getting a really bad reaction to this, we've got to change plans, they might have been able to find their way to some kind of a plan that could still salvage part of the idea, retain good public relations with the fans, and basically reverse everything. But they didn't. They had doubled down, and they tripled down, and then they denied everything, and so that's it. Now they lost the fans, and there was no recovery after that point, in my opinion. And all of these disasters are on Cynthia Williams' head. They ultimately land there. You might say, well, but it's not her fault. What about, what about the guy who said D&D can't get rid of white men soon enough and stuff like that, right? All fine. But basically, there's a rule in these sorts of institutions, right? That the ultimate responsibility lies at the top, right? The buck stops there. She was the one that promised $1 billion in D&D value, and she did not get it, okay? And there's literally nothing I can think of that she contributed, that is to say, even though it was contributed under her watch, right? In the last 2 years, Wizards has produced nothing that succeeded. Nothing. Baldur's Gate 3 succeeded, but that wasn't Wizards, and that wasn't something that was started in the last 2 years. It started like 6-7 years ago. But everything else, everything Wizards has done in the last 2 years has turned to absolute crap, and that was all under Cynthia Williams' watch. So that is why, Double D, Cynthia Williams has not done a good job, even to her standards, never mind to ours, right? It's not that we just don't like what she did. It's that what she did was disastrously bad for Hasbro. And yet, she walks away with $11.5 million, right? That's how much she earned in 2 years of work. And with no consequences. In fact, she's almost certainly going to be given a higher CEO position in some other company because that's how it works, first of all, but also especially because she's a woman, right? Because she could be in, I mean, we've now seen you could plagiarize entire pages of text in something that you were being graded for and still become president of Harvard as long as you have the right, skin color and genitalia, So This is why our entire civilization is falling apart, actually. It's because we've switched from being a democratic nation of individualists who work together, a democratic polity, rather, the West as a whole, I'm not talking about the United States alone here, that the entire Western concept has turned from being a meritocratic, individual-centered, democratic model to being a managerial state that is essentially no longer democratic, only has the facade of that, and where those managers on every level, in academia, in media, in politics, and in business, are fundamentally incompetent. They are not the people, they're not the people who built any of this. They're the heirs of generations past that would have been appalled by these people, and none of them know how to keep it going. They haven't got a clue. And so they've become experts instead in creating hyper-normalization and pretending that a fantasy is true and forcing other people by one means or another to buy into that fantasy and continue that illusion. So essentially business corporate business, the top echelons, are full of people that went to a university that was the right type of university, put in the amount of money that was necessary, hung around there for a while, learned nothing, come out with the document. They're now officially licensed to do this. Then what they did learn was all the speak, right? All of the fantasy. They learned how to use all the lingo. They learned what terms to do, what politics to support, what are the right kind of clothes to wear, what are the right kind of attitudes to take, what are the right kind of clubs to join, and how to network. And of course, in the case of certain people, how to take advantage of your diversity qualities in order to get ahead, right? Especially more recently. And then they have gone on from one job to another, sooner or later catastrophically screwing it up, which only means that they then have to go out, they take a couple of months off, and then they get hired somewhere else because there's never any consequence. No one goes to jail. No one's job is finished, right? Almost no one, right? Like you'd basically have to be completely against type. You'd have to completely act contrary to all the expectations of how you're supposed to behave. But as long as you behave, you're going to get another job. None of it matters, right? The shareholders certainly don't matter. The shareholders are the ones losing here. And as we saw here at Hasbro, with Disney, and many other places, the shareholders just don't even have the power to stop the managerial class. They have literally been hijacked, right? Their money has been stolen from them by this managerial class of imbeciles who get to run things into the ground while becoming champions of their internal political and ideological contests, right? Of who's the most woke CEO and stuff like that. And they don't care. It doesn't matter to them. Their goal isn't making money anyways, right? They're supposed to make money, but if they don't, nothing really bad is going to end up happening, right? So that's why somebody like Cynthia Williams could promise, D&D will be worth $1 billion. It would have to be like 11 times more successful than it is at the moment I'm saying this. But yeah, sure, I'll do that. Yeah, it doesn't matter, right? Because you've got to be crazy to make that promise, right? Unless you're Elon Musk, there's no way you're accomplishing that, right? And Elon would have put his own money on the line like he did with Tesla to do that, right? But Cynthia Williams just said it because there's no downside to not saying it. She says it, she sounds like she's this hotshot, super power action woman that is going to get everything done. And if it fails, she resigns. She's going to go become CEO of some tech company, or I don't know, a phone company, or some Target store or whatever. But she's going to be the boss over there and run that into the ground too. And it'll just continue until basically our civilization collapses. And on that terrible disappointment, I think we'll stop here. Be sure to check out the Pundit Files. If you want something to relieve you of this existential angst I've left you with, check out the Pundit Files number 10. It's out now. You know how the Pundit Files number 9 was the biggest issue of the Pundit Files? Well, number 10 is actually bigger. It's like 29 pages, but that's because a big part of it was not written by me. So, number 10, Pundit Files number 10, available only at the Red Room store, is about medieval authentic jousting and horses. And so the jousting part I've done, that's about 7 pages. And the rest of it has been written by the Mad Hermit, the guy who publishes the Pundit Files. And it is an incredible guide, because this is a guy who really knows horses. An incredible guide to making your horses more detailed and interesting in a campaign where you have horses in OSR play. And it's really worthwhile. It's still only $3.50. I rode horses all the time as a kid. I was very much an equestrian, but I didn't really know anything about it. My dad was president of the local equestrian club. My sister jumped. She would jump stuff and do jumping and all that stuff. I just like to get on the horse and ride. And of course, I couldn't even identify what type of horse is which because I didn't even have to worry about taking care of it, right? There were people who did that. But I do love riding horses. But I had there was no way I was going to be able to put in the depth of knowledge that Matt Hermit, who's from Montana, so I'm assuming I don't know, he probably sleeps on a horse. I'm not sure, but from Montana, he has clearly got a lot of great knowledge. That's a great book to pick up. So check that out. Check out all my other products. Sword and Caravan, Medieval Adventures on the Silk Road, Arrows of Indra, the Old School Companion 1, if you want all kinds of interesting additional material and rules that you can pump into either Lion and Dragon or any other OSR game to give it a more medieval authentic feel. Check out all the links. They're going to be in the description of this video below. And do hit the like, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and share this video everywhere you can. And share the Red Room review video, the one I did just before this, because it's only been out for 24 hours. Help people check out some of the reviews, because the reviews always need a little bit of an extra push to be able to be as successful as the regular videos. So please check it out. And that's everything for today. Currently smoking Lorenzetti Oversize plus Argento Roots.